Most people today are not lazy, they're exhausted. They wake up tired, drag themselves through the morning routine, and somehow find the energy to show up. They work all day, sometimes longer. They sit down at night, scroll through their phones, watch something mindless, and still feel behind. There's always something undone, always something waiting. Burnout isn't rare anymore. It's not a condition reserved for executives or emergency room doctors. It's normal, it's expected, it's almost a rite of passage in the modern workforce. But here's the uncomfortable truth that most people never stop to consider. For centuries, people worked longer hours, performed harder physical labor, and lived with far fewer comforts than we enjoy today. They had no climate control, no painkillers, no labor laws, no weekends as we understand them. And yet, burnout, as we define it now as this specific kind of chronic mental and emotional collapse, barely existed. Medieval workers labored from sunrise to sunset. They didn't have therapy, they didn't have productivity apps or time management systems, they didn't have ergonomic chairs or standing desks or meditation retreats sponsored by their employers. Yet, something about their lives prevented the kind of psychological deterioration that modern workers now experience at scale. Something protected them, something we lost. So, what changed? In this video, we're going to compare medieval work life with modern work life. Not to romanticize the past, not to suggest we should return to an era of plague and feudalism, but to expose the systems that protected people then and the ones quietly breaking us now. And if you're watching this because you feel tired all the time, overwhelmed by invisible demands, or constantly on even when you're supposed to be resting, this video will explain why. Not with platitudes, not with productivity tips, but with history. If you find yourself thinking, I've always felt this, but never had the words for it, subscribe to Before Modern Life. This channel exists to explain what changed calmly, honestly, and without nostalgia. We're not here to sell you a fantasy of the past. We're here to understand what modernity took from us and what we might be able to reclaim. Before we go further, we need to define what we're actually talking about. Burnout is not just tiredness. Everyone gets tired. Medieval peasants got tired. Roman soldiers got tired. Hunter-gatherers got tired after long hunts. Burnout is something different. It's a specific psychological syndrome that includes emotional exhaustion, the feeling that you have nothing left to give, that your capacity for care, attention, and engagement has been depleted to zero. Loss of meaning, the creeping sense that your work doesn't matter, that you're spinning your wheels, that nothing you do connects to anything real. Constant cognitive strain, the inability to stop thinking about work, the mental tabs that never close, the low grade, anxiety that hums beneath every moment of supposed rest, the feeling that effort never leads to relief. You work hard, but you never feel done. You finish tasks, but more appear. There's no finish line, no moment of completion. That combination is distinctly modern. Medieval people experienced hardship. They experienced hunger. They experienced cold winters without adequate heating. They experienced physical pain from labor, injury, and untreated illness. They experienced uncertainty about harvests, wars, and survival, but they did not live under constant psychological pressure. They did not experience the specific kind of mental erosion that defines burnout. Why? Because their work existed inside natural limits, and ours does not. To understand this, we need to stop asking the question most people ask. How hard did medieval people work? And start asking a better question. How was their work structured? The answer to that question changes everything. Medieval labor followed the sun, the seasons, and the body. This wasn't a philosophical choice. It wasn't because medieval people were wiser or more enlightened about work-life balance. It was simply the reality of a world without artificial light and modern technology. There were no clocks ruling the day. Time wasn't measured in minutes and hours, the way we measure it now. Work began when the sun rose and ended when the sun set. Not because that was the most efficient schedule, but because darkness made work impossible. That constraint mattered more than we realize. Modern work ignores circadian rhythm, it ignores daylight cycles, it ignores seasonal changes in human energy. We expect the same output in December that we expect in June. We expect the same alertness at 9 p.m. that we expect at 9 a.m. Medieval work was forced to respect these rhythms. In winter, days were short. The sun rose late and set early. Work slowed naturally. Activity was limited by the simple fact that you couldn't see what you were doing after dark. People spent more time indoors, more time resting, more time in what we might now call recovery mode. In summer, days were long. Work intensified. People labored for more hours because more hours were available. Exhaustion was expected, but it was followed by rest. The harvest ended, the days shortened, the body was allowed to recover. This seasonal rhythm prevented chronic strain. Think about what this meant practically. A medieval farmer in January wasn't anxious about being unproductive. The world around them validated rest. Everyone was resting. The animals were resting. The land was resting. There was no guilt because there was no alternative. Compare that to a modern knowledge worker in January. The same emails arrive, the same deadlines loom, the same metrics must be hit. Your body might be craving rest, might be responding to ancient signals that say, slow down, it's winter, but nothing in your environment supports that instinct. You override it with coffee and willpower and guilt. Modern workers, by contrast, live in perpetual summer. Artificial light means we can work at any hour. Digital connectivity means we can be reached at any moment. Climate control means we feel no physical signal that seasons are changing. The expectations placed on us are identical year-round. January productivity targets look the same as July productivity targets. The body never gets a true off-season. There's no enforced recovery period, no natural slowdown, and burnout thrives in environments where rest is never enforced by external conditions. One of the most overlooked differences between medieval and modern work is deceptively simple. Medieval days ended, not metaphorically, literally. When the sun went down, work stopped. Tools were put away, the village quieted. There was nothing else to do because there was nothing else you could do. There was no email waiting in your pocket, no messaging app pinging with requests, no just one more task that could be squeezed in before bed. Darkness was an absolute boundary. It wasn't optional. It wasn't something you had to enforce through willpower or digital detox strategies. It was simply the end of the day. Modern work has no natural ending. Even after official work hours, your phone remains active. Your laptop sits on the kitchen table. Notifications arrive. Unresolved tasks linger in your mind. The boundary between work and not work is fuzzy at best, non-existent at worst. This creates what psychologists call cognitive spillover, the phenomenon where work never fully leaves your mental space. You're physically at home, but mentally still at the office. You're technically off the clock, but your brain is still processing, planning, worrying. Medieval workers finished tasks physically. They saw completion visually. A field was plowed or it wasn't. A tool was forged or it wasn't. A wall was built or it wasn't. At the end of each day, there was tangible evidence of what had been accomplished. They felt closure daily. Modern workers manage abstract tasks. We juggle invisible responsibilities. We send emails into the void and wait for responses. We work on projects that span weeks or months with no clear moment of completion. We rarely feel done. The psychological term for this is the Zeigarnik effect. The mind's tendency to remember and fixate on incomplete tasks more than completed ones. Our brains evolved to track unfinished business because in ancestral environments, unfinished business could be dangerous, a half-built shelter, an unfinished hunt, an unresolved conflict. But in a world where tasks are genuinely completable, This mental feature works in our favor, but in a world where tasks are genuinely completable, this mental feature works in our favor. You finish something, your brain lets it go, you move on. In a world where tasks are infinite and abstract, this same feature becomes a curse. Your brain tries to hold on to everything. It keeps the tabs open, it never releases the tension. Medieval workers triggered the complete signal dozens of times per day. Every finished row, every forged nail, every harvested bundle. Modern workers might go weeks or months without triggering that signal in any meaningful way. And here's the key insight: burnout doesn't come from effort alone. It comes from unfinished mental loops. It comes from the psychological weight of tasks that never reach completion. It comes from the absence of closure. Medieval work provided closure automatically. Modern work almost never does. If this comparison is changing how you see your own work life, take a moment to like this video. It helps more people find it. And subscribe if you want more calm, long-form explanations like this. We post new videos every week exploring the hidden costs of modern life. Medieval labor was rarely solitary. Fields were worked together. Multiple families, multiple generations, side by side in the dirt. Workshops were shared spaces where apprentices, journeymen, and masters worked within arm's reach of each other. Skills were learned not from YouTube tutorials or online courses, but from watching, imitating, and receiving immediate feedback from people physically present. This mattered psychologically in ways we're only beginning to understand. Modern work isolates people. Even in offices, we sit in cubicles or behind screens. We're measured by individual metrics. We receive personal performance reviews. We experience private stress that we're often afraid to share because it might make us look weak or incompetent. Remote work, for all its benefits, has intensified this isolation. Many people now work entirely alone in apartments or home offices, connected to colleagues only through screens and chat messages. Medieval work spread effort and responsibility across the group. When work was shared, stress was diluted. If one person struggled, others could help. If one person made a mistake, it was visible but normalized. Everyone made mistakes. Everyone had bad days. Effort felt collective because it was collective. No one was carrying the weight alone. Burnout accelerates in isolation. When success and failure are personal, internalized, and invisible, pressure compounds. There's no one to share the load, no one to provide perspective, no one to remind you that your struggles are normal, that everyone experiences difficulty, that you're not uniquely broken. Medieval workers experienced hardship together. Modern workers experience pressure alone. There's a profound difference between struggling alongside others and struggling by yourself. When you can see that others are working hard, making mistakes, and pushing through difficulty, your own struggles feel normal. They feel like part of being human, not evidence of personal inadequacy. When you work in isolation, you have no reference point. You don't know if everyone else is handling things better than you. You don't know if your pace is normal or slow. You don't know if your anxiety is reasonable or excessive. In the absence of information, the mind fills in the blanks, and it usually fills them in negatively. You assume others are doing fine. You assume you're the one falling behind. You assume your struggles reflect something wrong with you specifically. This is the paradox of modern individualism. We gained privacy and autonomy, but we lost the psychological grounding that comes from shared experience. And loneliness is one of the most potent accelerants of burnout that exists. Another critical difference between medieval and modern work lies in the realm of meaning. Medieval workers understood the direct purpose of their labor. The food they grew fed their family. The goods they crafted served their village. The skills they developed were visible, respected, and clearly connected to survival and community well-being. There was little abstraction between effort and outcome. Modern work is deeply abstract. Many of us spend our days producing reports that feed into other reports. We track metrics that measure things several steps removed from any tangible outcome. We hit targets that exist within systems within systems. We send emails that generate more emails. Ask a medieval blacksmith what he did, and he would say, I make tools that help people farm and build. The purpose was clear. Ask many modern workers what they do, and the answer requires a paragraph of context, org charts, and caveats. The purpose is buried under layers of abstraction. This matters because meaning acts as a psychological buffer against exhaustion. When you understand why your work matters, when you can see the connection between your effort and something real, you can endure difficulty. You can push through hard days. The strain feels worth it. When meaning erodes, when the connection between effort and outcome becomes invisible or non-existent, exhaustion deepens. You're not just tired, you're tired and you don't know why you're bothering. Many people today don't burn out because they work too hard. They burn out because their work feels disconnected from reality. They burn out because they've lost the thread of meaning that makes effort feel worthwhile. Medieval labor produced tangible outcomes. It reinforced identity. It created visible value in the world. Modern labor often produces emails, numbers, and temporary outputs that vanish into digital systems, never to be seen again. The absence of meaning isn't just disappointing, it's exhausting. Psychologists who study burnout have found that meaning is one of the strongest protective factors against it. People can endure tremendous difficulty when they believe their effort matters. Soldiers, activists, caregivers, they often work under brutal conditions, but maintain psychological resilience because they see the purpose of their sacrifice. But strip away meaning, and even relatively easy work becomes draining. You're not just using energy. You're using energy for nothing. The expenditure feels wasteful, pointless, absurd. This is why some of the highest rates of burnout occur not in the hardest jobs, but in jobs that feel meaningless. Bureaucratic positions where people shuffle papers that no one reads. Corporate roles where the connection to any real-world outcome has been severed by layers of abstraction. Jobs where the answer to why does this matter is simply because the system requires it. Here's something that surprises most people when they first learn it. Medieval Europe had more rest days than modern societies do. Feast days, holy days, saints' days, seasonal pauses, market days, when normal work was suspended. Historians estimate that medieval peasants had somewhere between 70 and 150 days off per year, depending on the region and time period. That's not a typo. In some cases, medieval workers had more days off than modern workers with generous vacation policies. Work stopped regularly, not as a reward for productivity, not as something earned through hustle, but as a rule, as a structural feature of society. Rest wasn't conditional, it was assumed. The church calendar enforced rest. Communities enforced rest. The rhythm of agricultural life enforced rest. You didn't have to justify taking time off. You didn't have to prove you deserved it. It was simply how life worked. Modern culture flipped this completely. Today, rest is conditional. You have to earn your vacation days. You have to request time off and hope it's approved. Even when you're technically on vacation, you might feel pressure to check email or remain available. Leisure feels guilty. There's always something else you could be doing, should be doing. Stopping feels risky, like you're falling behind while everyone else keeps moving. When rest becomes optional, it disappears. When rest requires willpower to claim, many people simply don't claim it. They push through. They tell themselves they'll rest later when things calm down. But things never calm down. Medieval systems forced recovery. The structure of society made rest unavoidable. Modern systems require extraordinary self-discipline to rest, and they punish that rest subtly through missed opportunities, accumulated work, and the nagging sense that you're not keeping up. Burnout is the cost of making rest a personal responsibility instead of a structural guarantee. Consider the psychological difference. In medieval society, when a feast day arrived, everyone stopped. The blacksmith stopped, the farmer stopped, the miller stopped. You weren't falling behind because no one was pulling ahead. Rest was collective. In modern society, when you take time off, the world keeps moving. Emails accumulate, competitors don't pause. The fear of falling behind is real because falling behind is possible. Rest becomes a calculated risk rather than a natural rhythm. This fundamentally changes the experience of rest. Medieval rest was restorative because it was complete. Modern rest is often anxious, partial, contaminated by the knowledge that the machine keeps running without you. True rest requires the absence of pressure, and pressure doesn't disappear just because you're not at your desk. Let's be very clear about what we're saying here. Modern work is not worse because it's immoral. It's not worse because modern employers are evil or because capitalism is a conspiracy to destroy human happiness. Modern work is worse because it violates human design constraints. We evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in environments with natural light cycles, seasonal variation, clear task completion, communal effort, tangible outcomes, and enforced rest. Modern work ignores natural rhythms. It removes clear endings. It isolates effort. It abstracts purpose. It eliminates enforced rest. Each of these changes on its own might be manageable. Together, they create a perfect storm of psychological strain. Medieval work was physically harder. There's no question about that. It was backbreaking, dangerous, and often painful, but it was mentally contained. When the day ended, it ended. When the season ended, it ended. When the task was done, it was done. The mind could rest because the structures of life allowed it to rest. Modern work is physically easier. We sit in comfortable chairs in temperature-controlled rooms, doing tasks that rarely threaten our bodies. But it is mentally unbounded. The work never ends. The tasks never complete. The pressure never releases. The mind cannot rest because nothing forces it to rest. Burnout isn't a personal failure. It's not a sign that you're weak or that you need better coping strategies or that you should try harder at self-care. Burnout is a system mismatch. It's what happens when human minds designed for one kind of environment are forced to operate in a completely different kind of environment. Understanding this is the first step toward doing something about it. We can't go back to medieval life. We wouldn't want to. But we can recognize the design constraints we're violating and make conscious choices to address them. We can create artificial boundaries where natural ones don't exist. We can seek out completion and tangibility in our work. We can build communities that share burden rather than isolating in achievement. We can fight for structural rest rather than relying on willpower alone. None of this is easy. The systems we live within resist these changes, but understanding the problem clearly is the prerequisite for any solution. We need to be honest here. This video is not a call to return to medieval life. Medieval people suffered in ways we can barely imagine. Disease killed children regularly. Inequality was brutal and legally enforced. Freedom as we understand it didn't exist for most people. Physical danger was constant. Life expectancy was short. Comfort was rare. Modern life improved many things: medicine, rights, opportunity, safety, the ability to choose your own path. But every improvement comes with trade-offs, and the trade-offs of modernity have been poorly understood until recently. When we gained artificial light, we lost natural boundaries. When we gained constant connectivity, we lost the ability to disconnect. When we gained individual achievement, we lost shared burden. When we gained abstract knowledge work, we lost tangible completion. When we gained freedom to choose our rest, We lost rest that was chosen for us. None of these trades are inherently bad, but they have costs, and those costs compound over time into what we now call burnout. Burnout is the hidden cost of efficiency without limits. It's the price we pay for a world optimized for productivity but not for human sustainability. Recognizing this doesn't mean rejecting modernity. It means understanding modernity clearly enough to make conscious choices about how we live within it. We can choose to create boundaries even when technology doesn't enforce them. We can choose to seek completion and closure even in abstract work. We can choose to build community even when individualism is the default. We can choose to protect rest even when the culture celebrates hustle. These choices are difficult because we're swimming against the current, but they become possible once we understand what we're swimming against and why. The goal isn't to become medieval, the goal is to become modern in a way that doesn't destroy us. If this video helped you understand why work feels so draining, not just emotionally but structurally, subscribe to Before Modern Life. This channel exists to ask the questions that modern life discourages. What changed when life became modern? What did we lose along the way? And what might we be able to reclaim? Leave a comment if any part of this video felt uncomfortably accurate. Share it with someone who's been running on empty, who keeps pushing through, who thinks they just need to try harder or optimize better. Because burnout isn't weakness. It's not a character flaw. It's not something you fix with a better morning routine or a meditation app. Burnout is a signal. It's your mind telling you that the system you're operating in wasn't designed for minds like yours, for human minds. Understanding that signal is the first step toward reclaiming control. Not control over your productivity, control over your life. Thanks for watching.